During my career so far, I've written hundreds of blogs, I've co-written a New York Times best-selling book, and I've written a PhD thesis. And as I've mentioned in a previous video, I've recently wanted to delve much more seriously into writing fiction. And one thing I've learned is that I used to have a lot of bad habits. In fact, 3 major bad habits as a writer that slowed down my progress, or that if I was going back and telling my 20-year-old self to do these things, I would tell him to do them sooner. So number 1 would be to stop trying to sound like a writer. The author Christopher Hitchens once said that you should write the way you talk. Of course, he said the problem is, look at the way most people talk. George Orwell also said, never use a complicated word where a simple word will do. Words like utilize or constitute. He said these are clunky, jargonistic, scientific sounding words that clutter up your prose, and they are the hallmark of someone being pretentious, someone trying too hard. And I remember when I was first writing, I always wanted to try and emulate, as soon as I would sit down on the page, I would try and create this authorly voice that was very high-minded, pompous, trying to sound a lot more intellectual, and often this is just an insecurity. It's a way of trying to say, hey, I'm really smart, I've got really good things to say, listen to me, look how educated I am. Really, writing that transfixes people, that makes them glued to the page, often is just the writing that pulls you from word to word, from sentence to sentence, and it's because it sounds like someone is just talking to you through the page. So there's a few people you can read that help you do this. People like George Orwell, brilliant for stripped down, unpretentious, but really crisp writing. Look at his great essay in defense of English cooking. I feel like it's an essay I would give any class on like writing 101. Also check out people like Haruki Murakami, Karl of Knausgaard, who I've mentioned before, Charles Bukowski, Sally Rooney, Elena Ferrante. These authors, it's not that they write in a simplistic way, but they write in a way that is almost leaning towards conversational, where you feel like the writing is pulling you, it's not pretentious, the prose is a little more spare, and it's really, really good training for getting you into a natural way of writing. Second mistake I made was trying too hard to be original. I feel like this was such a sticking point for me for a long time, so much so that it put me off of writing fiction for years, because I felt like I needed some brilliant, genius idea that no one had ever thought of before. I had to completely reinvent the wheel. And really, originality is about voice. It's about having an original voice, not an original idea. Many of the stories we love the most have been told 100 times before. A revenge story, an adventure. People go set off to destroy the Dark Lord, to be evil. Someone is in love with someone who's in love with someone else. We're in love with their best friend and they're jealous and they want to win them over. Or someone suffers heartbreak and then has to find themselves and fall in love again. These stories are not new, they're as old as civilization, but the thing that we're drawn to is when someone has a fresh approach, when someone has a fresh voice. You know, even if you take a movie like Kill Bill, right? Kill Bill is a classic samurai revenge story, but it's told with all this mishmash of Western and Eastern influences, and it's kind of this crazy, blood-splattered, fun, modern, playful take on the big revenge story, and that's why we love it. It's just giving something that's already there a new twist. And everyone talks about that Picasso quote, good artists copy, great artists steal, but that really is the essence of it, that you can, you know, Shakespeare lifts his plots and then just makes them wonderful because he's Shakespeare, and makes the dialogue amazing and turns them into these deep philosophical musings on humanity and love and death and everything else. But essentially he's hanging it on stories that already existed. So realizing, I've done this with blogging as well. I've sometimes just read an amazing blog post and just thought, I love the format of that blog post. I'm going to use that exact person's format, change the title, make it about something I'm talking about, like relationships and dating, and just do my version of it. And once you realize this, the job of being a creative becomes so much easier, because you realize all the stuff is already out there hanging around for you to pluck as you want, and it's just up to you to then say what you're gonna say, bring your approach, your argument, your thoughts onto an already established format. The third mistake I made was not seeking out mentors. I've had people who have taught me along the way, who helped me learn as a writer. I always would have people in my life who inadvertently would act as kind of mentors, where there'd be a professor at my university who would refine my writing, who would teach me how to write essays, structure an argument better. I would have people at school, I would have people, editors, who looked at my work, when I was working on a non-fiction book and kind of give me feedback, but I never consciously looked for someone who I would actually want to absorb and learn from. And I realized only over the last year or two, I had to be much more conscious about finding someone who's much further down the road than I am, where I can just give my work, learn from what they have to say, and start to get that kind of mentor-student relationship. And I've recently been doing that with a writing teacher, where I've talked about before, where I give 5 pages and she gives me 5 pages back with feedback, comments, thoughts, etc. And that is just such a massive shortcut to progress. I think when you're on your own, just trying to do things in your cave, you really don't know what's great and what's not. And when you get stuck, that's the worst thing. That's where a mentor can really help you, is when you get stuck and bang your head against the wall and you think, I don't know why this isn't working, this piece of writing I'm doing, it just isn't, something feels off about it. That's where they can just look with their experience and just say, hey, I actually think this first half is really great. You've got it completely right there, and it's only these little parts in the second half that aren't working, so if you just tweak them a bit, then you're fine. Or they'll say, hey, it feels like there's a different idea here and you're kind of skirting around it, but maybe you should try this instead. And just having that shortcut, that pair of eyes, where instead of spending a year banging your head against the wall for something that isn't working, a mentor is there so that when you get stuck, they give you the next staircase to move to. They give you the ladder to get to the next part of the level you're trying to get to. And so wherever you can, you're not going to email someone and say, hey, I want you to be your mentor, because a lot of people who are doing big things are going to be way too busy to do that. But you might want to look at getting a coach in the area you're learning at, or a tutor, going to a class if it's writing, just finding any way where you're going to find someone who's far ahead of you and is willing to give you that feedback, harsh and good, because sometimes you need the encouragement. I know that I have in the past, where I just need someone to tell me that this is good and worth pursuing, and just for when you're getting stuck, so that they can give you the keys to the next part of the game. So those are 3 writing mistakes I've made. Let me know in the comments if you've had any of these, and if you've worked on them, what you want to work on in the future in your creative and writing life. I'll see you soon.